Desmond Doss, unarmed, alone, and surrounded. Hacksaw Ridge, Okinawa, 1945. In the spring of 1945, as the Second World War entered its final and most merciless phase, the island of Okinawa became the stage for a battle that would abandon all remaining illusions about honor, momentum, or clean victories. This was no longer a war of movement or strategy in the classical sense, but a slow and deliberate collision between exhaustion and refusal to surrender, fought on ground where every ridge, cave, and slope had already been prepared to kill. Okinawa mattered not because it promised glory, but because it offered proximity. It was the last major island before mainland Japan, and both sides understood that what happened here would define how the war ended, or how long it would continue to consume human lives after it no longer made strategic sense. Among the American troops ordered ashore were thousands of infantrymen trained to advance, secure, and destroy. Yet also among them was a single combat medic who carried no rifle, no pistol, and no blade of any kind. He did not come to Okinawa to fight. He came because he believed refusing to serve was morally weaker than serving without violence. His name was Desmond Doss. Desmond Thomas Doss was born in 1919 in Lynchburg, Virginia, into a working-class Seventh-day Adventist family, where religious conviction was not an abstract belief, but a daily discipline that shaped behavior, restraint, and responsibility. From an early age, he absorbed a literal interpretation of the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," not as metaphor or moral guideline, but as an unbreakable rule that applied regardless of circumstance. When the United States entered World War II after Pearl Harbor, Doss did not claim exemption, nor did he seek a safe position away from danger. Instead, he enlisted in the U.S. Army as a conscientious objector, requesting assignment as a medic, a role that would allow him to serve without violating his refusal to take life. This decision immediately placed him at odds with military culture. Within training units, Doss was ridiculed, isolated, and at times openly harassed by fellow soldiers who viewed his refusal to carry a weapon not as moral conviction, but as cowardice disguised as faith. Some attempted to have him removed from service altogether, arguing that a man who would not fight endangered everyone else. Yet Doss did not argue philosophy. He did not attempt to persuade. He simply remained. By April 1945, Doss was serving with the 77th Infantry Division as the American assault on Okinawa reached one of its most lethal objectives, a jagged escarpment later known to U.S. forces as Hacksaw Ridge. The ridge itself was not impressive in height, but its geography made it nearly impassable under fire. A sheer cliff face leading to a plateau riddled with caves, tunnels, and fortified Japanese positions that allowed defenders to appear, disappear, and strike from multiple angles without warning. Japanese forces on Okinawa did not rely on mass charges or visible formations. They fought from concealment, patience, and attrition, forcing American units to advance into spaces where death arrived from directions that could not be anticipated or suppressed. When U.S. troops finally climbed the ridge using rope ladders, initial progress collapsed almost immediately. Heavy machine gun fire, mortar, and grenades shattered cohesion, turning organized movement into panic and panic into retreat. As American forces were ordered to withdraw, hundreds of wounded men were left behind on the plateau, alive, conscious, and unable to move. When the retreat began, Desmond Doss did not follow. He remained on the plateau alone, without cover, without weapon, and without any certainty that Japanese soldiers had fully withdrawn. What followed was not a single heroic act, but hours of sustained effort carried out under constant threat, in darkness broken only by explosions and tracer fire. Doss moved deliberately, scanning the battlefield for signs of life, administering aid where possible, dragging wounded men across open ground, and inching them toward the edge of the cliff. There, using a rope system, He lowered each injured soldier down the escarpment, one by one, often while under fire. Each rescue required time. Each return to the plateau meant exposing himself again. And after each descent, he chose to go back. Later, Doss described his actions not as bravery, but as repetition. The repeated refusal to stop while someone else still needed help. There was no charge, no dramatic stand, no moment of domination over the enemy. There was only endurance. By the time the night ended, estimates confirmed that approximately 75 wounded soldiers had been rescued from the ridge. Men who would have been captured or killed survived because one unarmed medic refused to abandon them. In the days that followed, Doss himself was wounded by sniper fire and later struck by grenade fragments, sustaining serious injuries that nearly ended his life. Even then, he delayed evacuation until he ensured another wounded man was treated first. For his actions on Okinawa, Desmond Doss received the Medal of Honor, becoming the first conscientious objector in American history to receive the nation's highest military decoration. The award was presented not as a symbolic exception, but as acknowledgement that courage does not require violence, only commitment. Yet the medal does not explain the man. Doss never claimed moral superiority over those who fought with weapons, nor did he present his beliefs as universally applicable. He simply accepted the consequences of his own choice and carried them into the most dangerous environment imaginable. War often reveals character, not through grand decisions, but through persistence under pressure. The quiet insistence on continuing when withdrawal would be reasonable, justified, and forgiven. Desmond Doss did not change the outcome of the Battle of Okinawa. He did not alter strategy, shorten the war, or reshape history in the conventional sense. What he demonstrated instead was something narrower and therefore more difficult to dismiss: that a single individual, acting without force, can still impose meaning on chaos through responsibility. On Hacksaw Ridge in 1945, surrounded by death and stripped of protection, one unarmed man refused to accept that survival required participation in killing. He did not conquer the battlefield. He endured it. And sometimes, endurance is the only form of victory that remains. The battle ended, but the place did not return to what it once was. Years later, the ridge still remained, unchanged in shape, yet entirely different in meaning. The ground no longer echoed with gunfire, but with footsteps of visitors who walked quietly, often without speaking, as if conversation itself felt inappropriate in a place that had once demanded so much from so many. Nothing on the landscape explains what happened there. No sound, no motion, no visible struggle. The wind moves through the grass the same way it does anywhere else, and the sky above Okinawa offers no memory of the night when men waited for dawn, uncertain they would see it. History rarely remembers the hours of waiting, the fear, or the exhaustion. It records positions, dates, and outcomes. But what remains unrecorded are the decisions made when no one was watching, moments when a single person chose to stay instead of leave, to carry instead of abandon, to return when retreat was justified. Desmond Doss did not change the nature of war. War remained what it always was. Yet within it, he proved something quieter, that even where destruction is expected, mercy can still exist, not as victory, but as refusal. And long after the battle faded into history, the ridge kept only one true memory, not of the weapons that were carried up its face, but of the man who climbed it without one.